again during their 40 years in the wilderness. And the reason they were in the wilderness for 40 years, you guessed it, because they're tempting God or they're frustrating him by not listening to him. And so there's this great warning to not be like them, but to learn from them. Verse 9, where your fathers tried me and testing me and saw my works for 40 years. So throughout the 40 years in the wilderness, the Israelites continued in their rebellious ways and attitude. What's so terrible about the Israelites, and we're the Israelites so many times, so I'm not just sitting here cursing them. That's us. That's how we should look at it. So often it's us. But the saddest reality is God says, you're going to march in this wilderness till you're dead because of your disobedience to me. I'm sure some of them were like, oh, God, can we just die? He's like, no. You got to march for 40 years in the wilderness because of your disobedience. And so a part of that is this bitterness of not listening to God, of not changing their attitude. It's just this, well, then you better provide for us. Well, they've got it completely backwards. They're not learning. They're not growing. They're continuing to test him, even though he provides for them over and over again. Verse 10, therefore I was angry with that generation, or this generation, and said, they always go astray in their heart, and they did not know my ways. So because the Israelites provoked God in the wilderness so often, he was angry or grieved with them. They made God mad, and they made him so greatly displeased with them that there was two things specifically he mentions that he's displeased with. He says that they always go astray in their heart. That's the first thing. And the second, and they did not know my ways. Go ahead.
Going back to verse 7.
Yeah.
You said, today, if you hear his voice.
Yes.
The translation I'm looking at has one more word in there. It says, if you will hear his voice.
Sure.
I think that speaks to this difference because we can hear anything.
Sure.
But if we will hear.
Is that God? I'm just kidding.
The elephants in the attic,
Yes.
they run through your house.
Yes.
But I think that word makes a lot of difference in this whole thing.
I agree. I think that word it's added in to help the understanding of it, because that's what it means. It's that same idea today. If you hear his voice, it's not saying the special chosen people of God will hear this voice. It's saying if you will be willing to hear. And so I appreciate you bringing that out. It's not like this, well, I don't hear his voice. Well, you could, because we're not talking audible, right? We're talking scriptural. So it's not this like, well, I don't hear his voice. Well, guess what? Open it up and you get to. It's not like, well, I can't. Yes, you can, if you're willing. Just like the Israelites, if they were willing, they could have not hardened their own hearts. And look at this, because this is argued, we're not going to take the time today, but how much of it, often is it argued that God is the hardening of our hearts, that with Pharaoh and these other places, and in a way he is, because you can't really get out of Exodus without this understanding that God does say, I am hardening Pharaoh's heart. But it's not like a, Pharaoh, you have no chance. Or Judas, you have no chance. I am hardening your heart. It's not what the text says. There is equal amounts of text in Exodus that says Pharaoh hardened his own heart. But people like to not look at those. It's both. So God, in the process of who God is, knew Pharaoh was going to harden his heart based upon what he was going to do to free his people. That's not he's not making Pharaoh make those decisions. In fact, he tries to show him a great mercy. How often did Moses give the message of God, if you'll just stop this, if you'll just let these people go, this will stop. Okay, Moses, make them go away. And then Moses does. Well, God knew. God knew he wouldn't. But it's the grace of God that says, I'll lessen the severity of this, so that maybe you can think straight. And then the Pharaoh takes it and says, you know what, never mind, I'm still not letting them go. And then roll them round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6. But what does he say here? Do not harden your hearts. You don't. God is not just looking down at you and saying, harden your heart, you're going to hell. It's not who our God is. He's trying to make you soften your heart. The scheme of redemption and the plan of God all along was to soften your heart, never to harden it. Never. He wouldn't do what he did if he wanted to harden your heart. He's doing everything he can to get you to open it and to soften it. Okay, so so the two things, they go astray in their heart and they did not know my ways. So a few things here. They go astray in their heart. That's how they're hardening it. A part of hardening is that they are going astray. They were there. They heard the words of God, but they chose to keep going astray. And then the second part, they did not know my ways. Now, with the context of what we're saying here, did they not know his ways? Did they
do? They just chose not to follow him.
If the ways of God are his words, they knew his ways. Because God will not get angry. He would not be a just God if you didn't know what pleased him and he said, you're making me angry. It's never the case. God is angry when he's told you very clearly what to do and he's robbed you of any excuse, and then you don't do it out of rebellion. Adam and Eve knew very clear what to do. It was a simple instruction. Therefore, God was justified to be angry, to say, why have you gone astray from what I've told you? You can't go astray from something you don't know, right? So what he's saying there is they knew me and they just didn't choose me. They didn't care. They kept going to other things and people and gods. And for that, it kindled my anger with this generation. And so he says in verse 11, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. That is a horrifying statement. As I swore in my wrath. You do not want God to swear in his wrath. That's what David begs. Like, please don't. Please don't show your wrath to me. Please don't swear and promise your wrath upon me. And when he said, you will walk this wilderness for 40 years and die, they did. That's exactly what happened. He says the only exception is Caleb and Joshua. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. And so God is in that way to be looked at and to understand and to revere him. Verses 12 through 16, take care, brethren, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God, but encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So these Christians were in danger of apostatizing. They needed to give careful attention to this problem. The issue of life and the different issues of life begin in the heart. And so he says, if you're a Jew who believes in the name of Jesus, understand that it's a hard issue if you're still clinging to Moses and the old law. You're exalting things that do not get to be exalted to the place of Christ. Whether it's angels or it's Moses, that is not how you are to see him. You're to see him so much higher. And they're saying, don't let any of you have that evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. Brethren, the book of Hebrews most clearly and is arguably the best place to take people to show that those who were once saved can be lost. It's there over and over again in Hebrews. This verse right here, how does someone who believes that once you're saved, you can never lose your salvation? Listen to this verse. Take care, brethren, it's God's people, that there not be any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. It's possible. It's very possible. When you get into Hebrews 6 and other places, he double downs on this position. Why would he be giving these warnings in the first place? To consider Jesus and to hold tight until the end. Because look what he says. If we hold fast our confidence and the boast of our hope firm until the end, that's whose house we are. If. It means you may not. It means you need encouragement to keep doing it. You may not be a part of the church. You may start well and give up on Jesus. And you may sit here this morning, I don't know, and not be a part of the church. That's not judgment. It's a warning that the scriptures give to us. It's not to make you doubt, but self-reflection can go a long way. If you're never willing to look inwards and ask the question, where is my heart, O Lord? And is it yours? That's scary. It's scary if you just shut that door for 50 years and you say, I never have to look in there because I'm saved. It's good to have assurance. You need to. But your assurance needs to be based off of what God tells you and also you being honest with yourself and reflective self-inspection often. That's something that we need to do. And so encourage one another day after day, as long as it's still called today. It's a reference back up to today. If you hear his voice, he's saying, listen, encourage each other. If today is still called today, then today hear God's voice, right? Hear his voice. He goes back up to verse 7. And verse 14, for we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. So he's once again, if you have it here in your notes, then I don't have it up on the screen, but you have verse 14 mentioning this same type of thing. If we have become partakers of Christ, and if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. It means if you started your belief in Jesus, keep it. Keep it. Do not let go of him. And his second reminder is now in verse 14. While it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts when they provoke me. He's quoting the psalm again. The writer quotes again the Psalm 95:7, reminding these Jewish Christians again that they must not be like the rebellious Israelites, their fathers in the wilderness. Verse 16, for who provoked him when they heard? For who provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moses? Now, one could say, except for Caleb and Joshua. But his whole point is, out of all the people, who provoked God when they heard his words and drove him to anger and then suffered? Did not all of them? And so what is the picture he's trying to give them? If you all fall away, then you all fall away. That's what he says. He's like, so hold on. It's not going to be this thing like the arrogant Israelites and say, oh, he won't give up on us. We're his people. For one, if it wasn't for Moses begging on your behalf with his righteousness, God was giving up on them because they weren't his people any longer. But his faithfulness remained true. Jesus, all the more so, hangs on to you even when you don't hang on to him. But there is a limit, right? You have to acknowledge that. There is a limit. And when you're not caring about being a part of Christ, and you don't have anything in your life that reflects a person who has a heart for the Lord or his word, you should not expect that Jesus will claim you as his own. He'll say, I never knew you, Matthew 7. And so the Hebrew writer says, consider Jesus and don't let go of him. He is faithful, and he will hold on to you if you hold on to him. Thank you. I know I went over, but we got through chapter 3. So, thanks. Where's Randy? Yeah, whole chapter.